So, because I couldn't quite get the 15th Doctor up a few more spots, even though I really like him, I think he was absolutely amazing. But, yeah, as I mentioned, I couldn't quite get him higher. Maybe if he did more stuff. So, on to the next placement on this list, which is a Doctor who had probably the most. Like the era that just kind of like not. I don't want to say felt like the same all across the year, but it was like consistent. That's it. The most consistent. Yes, there was some ups and downs, but for the most parts, it was fairly consistent. There was some maybe a season that was probably stronger than the others, or a season that was maybe a little bit less good than the others, but like the most of it was fairly consistent. Number 7, and that is the Third Doctor, played by Jon Pertwee. Now, the Third Doctor is probably the most overlooked of the bigger Doctors, like the ones who's done most number of stories, or the one who's been in the role the longest, or the most well known. He's probably the second most popular classic Doctor. Well, maybe in recent years that might have changed, but in terms of the public, maybe he was probably the second most popular after Tom Baker for the most parts. That might have changed a bit since the new series came along, and or when other classic Doctors got more popular, namely the second and seventh. But consistency is the strongest part of the Jon Pertwee era, as like it's very similar, but also unique in their own ways. Like seasons 8, 9, and 10 very much feel like fairly consistent, even if they do mix things up each season. Like season 7 is entirely Earthbound. That was the whole concept that they wanted to go with the Third Doctor initially. Season 8 mostly follows that, but adds a few more members of the Unit family and introduces the Master. The stories aren't quite as long, because apart from Spearhead, all of season 7 was 7-parters. And the fourth story of that season, Colony in Space, although not a very good story in my opinion, did see the Third Doctor travel into time and space again for the first time as part of a secret mission for the Time Lords. Season 9 mixes this up a bit by including a few more travels in time and space alongside his Earthbound missions and an Earthbound time travel mission. And even some of his Earth missions include time travel in a way. See Day of the Daleks and the Time Monster. So Sea Devils is really the most traditional story of that season from what we've seen in the previous two. It definitely feels like a season 8 story, but moved forward a little bit in time. And then we get to season 10, which sees the Third Doctor go back into time and space for the majority of the season, bar the bookend stories. And even then, Three Doctors has them travel to the universe of antimatter. And then season 11, I think that's also got a bit of a mixture of time and space and Earthbound. But by this point, the things have changed a little bit for the Third Doctor's era, because Joe left, the Master's not really around anymore due to the passing of Roger Delgado. We got Sarah Jane introduced as a new companion, and things are kind of like ready. The season feels like it's cooling down from the Third Doctor's tenure and preparing for a brand new era with the fourth. But we still got a couple more adventures left. So there's both a consistency but also uniqueness to each season across from Spearhead from Space to Planet of the Spiders. And I think the Third Doctor's era is a very good one for if you just want something similar but different each time. So you want a unit-bound story, but you don't want the exact same thing every week. Then early to middle Third Doctor stuff is great. If you want something a bit more out and more back to time and space, but you understand that the Third Doctor's had this other arc going on, maybe go to season 10, season 11, maybe season 9 if you're okay with him still being under control of the Time Lords. So there's a good mixture here. The Third Doctor himself, I would kind of say, is one of the stronger characterized incarnations, but mostly down to the performance. I feel like there's definitely a lot from the writers here with the character. They're definitely giving their points of view across through him. They definitely do a really strong world and universe view, but a good chunk of this comes from Jon Pertwee himself, who absolutely makes the role. He is absolutely incredible. He's definitely a Doctor for the the early 70s, early to mid 70s. He's brilliant as sort of a James Bond-esque Doctor. Does a really great job with that. Maybe we could do something like that again, perhaps in the future. But yeah, he's really great. He does have a bit of an Englishman sort of feel with the character, and sometimes there is a few attitudes of the times through him as well, like with the first Doctor. But for the most parts, he's definitely like a really strong force. And again, blending some great elements that his two predecessors had, having like the sternness of the first Doctor, but the more openness of everybody else, like the second Doctor, but adding the tech and science wizardry that we know and love him for. And also the action. Like, he's really good in the action scenes. And he loves getting behind the wheel or handlebars of a vehicle. Even Day of the Daleks, where they just had a vehicle chase for no reason. Part 2 Planet of Spiders is literally a long vehicle chase scene, fitting for his final story. Yeah, he's the really cool one. He's so dapper in his costume as well. Those costumes are so great. You can see why Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor tried to replicate them later on in his era, from late Series 9 onwards, with the velvet jackets. Pertwee goes one step further though with the capes. He has some awesome capes as well as his great velvet and other jackets. He is so cool. He's the colourful Doctor well, because the series was in colour now, but he's the colourful Doctor before Colin Baker made the colourful Doctor. Well, I wouldn't say cool at the time, but you know, he was making the Doctor's colourful costumes cool. Before the Sixth Doctor's joke became mocked about because it was so many colours. Probably because Jon Pertwee only had like 2 or 3 at most at a time, and it was different outfits, different parts of the outfit, so it didn't clash too much. And usually, whatever he wore worked together. Maybe not all of them were perfect, but most of them were spot on. And yeah, but overall, it's the personality. The third Doctor is just awesome. There's not a huge amount to talk to him as compared to some of the other ones, but he is absolutely he's so good, and I think the era works so well because of Pertwee, because of the character's writing, because of the worldview at the time, and how that was being portrayed in the series. And it resulted in probably one of the strongest Doctors of the classic series. I know I've got 2 more on the list coming up, and I've got a couple more new Who's. But yeah, for probably the most consistent Doctor, Peak. Number 6. Numbers 6 and 5 are also interchangeable, but not quite for the same reasons. Because with numbers 10 and 11, I thought, because despite 12's rocky character development getting there, I thought it still had a clear trajectory, whilst the first Doctor was a bit more, it went, as it was going along, it made a bit more sense. But despite that, it was like on another time, maybe they might swap round, because it was handled really well for the first. I would say the first Doctor's one, it was handled better, but I think Capaldi himself managed to snag the position for the 12th Doctor above the first Doctor. But for 5 and 6, it's more of a case of which of the two I prefer from the same actor playing both incarnations. And that's right, we're on to the David Tennant 1-2, or 5-6, I should say. Yeah, so apologies in advance to Tennant stands, and especially for this one, because my 6th favourite Doctor is the 10th Doctor, played by David Tennant. I should also specify the 10th Doctor actually is 2 incarnations, or rather 2 lives, actually, because that same incarnation got shot by a Dalek in Stolen Earth and regenerates, but into himself. So apparently it counts as a regeneration according to the time of the Doctor. So the 10th Doctor is technically 2 Doctors, arguably. So like 10 and 10.5, and I don't mean the Meta Crisis Doctor. Right, anyway, 10th Doctor. Oh yes. Now the 10th Doctor is the one that I grew up with the arguably the most. Him and the 11th Doctor, and for most of the 12th Doctor as well. So I got a bit more. I suppose I got a bit of nostalgia for 12, but being a little bit older, I can see more of the flaws with him. But at the same time, also what they were going with. 10th Doctor. Now, this was the perfect storm. After the 9th Doctor, Chris Braxton only did one series due to behind-the-scenes reasons. They needed someone with the show carrying on after series 1, and they needed to get somebody in who would be able to carry the show for a few more years going forward. And David Tennant was the right man at the right time for the right role. And whilst I stand by Capaldi is the best actor to play the Doctor, Tennant is one of the ones in contention for second, along with, say, Tom Baker, Jon Pertwee, and, well, most of them. To me, David Tennant represents the new series as a whole, kind of like a thing, but not in a sense where I want him to take over it, like a lot of the marketing does a lot, quite fairly often, especially recently. But yeah, like how Tom Baker is the representation of the classic Who, more on him later, but again, don't want him to take over the marketing. I do like to see other Doctors have their time to shine, especially the incumbent ones, which at the moment is a bit tricky to say. But every time up to last May, and from whenever we get the 16th Doctor. So, yeah, Tennant was the perfect storm. He was like I said, right man, right time, right role. And, yeah, there's a reason he's become probably the second most iconic incarnation after Tom Baker's 4th Doctor. He is most popular Doctor with the 4th Doctor, maybe even more so nowadays, certainly with the younger generations, like who grew up with the new series, or watched the classic series on video and DVD, and then started watching the new series live, or new series audiences who came in later and went back, although maybe they're more attached to later Doctors. Similar to some of the classic Who Doctors who may have started with the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, who may also like the 4th Doctor, as he's one of their favourites, or favourite even. But yeah, for 10, it's really easy. He's got the charm, he's got the charisma. Yeah, he does have his sort of tendencies to say stuff like, "Well, yes, but no." Actually, I think there's a Russell T Davies thing in a thing where characters would just go, "No, but," and maybe they'll follow up with something else or something. Maybe they'll just leave it like that. I don't know why they do that. And I somehow noticed it more in Ncuti's era. I noticed it quite a bit in David Tennant's, but more so in Ncuti Gatwa's. I don't know why they do that. Why do you write "no but"? It's in the scripts. Unless you actually mean like "no but" explanation. But if you're just saying "no but," yeah, you don't need to do that. Anyway, but that's a writing thing, it's not a 10th Doctor thing. Well, a bit, but yeah, some of the things. Yeah, I could see some maybe getting on with some people's nerves quite a bit, but I think the 10th Doctor balances that with charm and charisma, action role, much like Jon Pertwee. He's a very action Doctor, possibly the most action Doctor of the new series. He's definitely got that energy with him, and Tennant fits the role like a glove. He is perfect in it. Series 2 is really good. He's really good in that, but I think Series 3 and 4 really show how great he is. Like Series 2, he's in the happy-go-lucky relationship with Rose. He's really great in that series. He's definitely a very strong first series for a Doctor. But when we come to Series 3 and 4, that's when we go to the next level. I think maybe even the level after that for Series 4 and the specials for Tennant's performance. And the characters' flaws are becoming more apparent as the show goes on, but it is drawn attention to that they are in bad ways, like negative points in some cases. Like maybe not so much off all the time, but that they do show consequences of some of these actions now and again. Maybe gets a little bit more annoying later towards the end in these specials when he's when he's getting really worried about dying and how his regeneration is going to be a death. And this is the penultimate regeneration, which in hindsight You could say he's scared about, like, the next incarnation will be his last, but he's treating this more like the regeneration itself is going to be a death, as opposed to he's going to enter his last life, which was retroactive as of 2013. And before that, it was probably even worse because he was the 10th going to the 11th, and no War Doctor established, and still enough regeneration not counting, apparently, yet. So, yeah, he had 3 more lives, so, as far as we knew back then. So, yeah, it was probably a little bit too dramatic in the specials, where he was worried about dying just from some vague... just because his song is apparently ending, and he takes that as he's going to die. Which, technically, yes, but technically also no. It's the regeneration. But yeah, that being said, 10th Doctor is still really great. He's got his negative sides, but I think for the most, and I can see why people may, like his detractors, wouldn't enjoy him, wouldn't like it. But I think for the most part, he is an incredibly great Doctor. Maybe his flaws could have been touched upon a bit more. I think Waters of Mars does that very well. That's a good example. Fires of Pompeii tests his morality regarding time, like the fixed points in time, which Waters of Mars also does. And I think he's pushed to the limit in several stories, mentally and physically, like the situation with the Master in the Series 3 finale. Physically, he's pushed to the limit in Planet of the Ood when he's chased by that fucking claw, that giant claw, which is... Yeah, this goes back to what I mean by him being like a more action Doctor. This is like... Yeah, I think out of all of the Doctors, aside Jon Pertwee, Tennant's the most action one. Other Doctors have lots of action as well, and of course they all do lots of running. But I think if you're going for the most action Doctor, after Jon Pertwee, it's probably David Tennant, 10th Doctor. And I also really love Tennant in the role of John Smith. I want to quickly shout out John Smith. He's not a Doctor. He's not going to be another bonus honourable mention that I forgot to mention earlier, but I'm adding in like the Duplicate Doctor or the Spy Master Doctor. But he's like Ruth, Ruth Clayton. He is the human alter ego. And I think this is where Tennant shines the best, to be honest, is in that 2-parter, The Human Nature and Family of Blood, as John Smith. As for the 10th Doctor, I'm not really sure what I said was his best performance. Maybe Midnight or Waters of Mars. I can't quite remember what I said back in the reviews. Definitely Series 4 or specials, as great as he is in Series 3. But I think in terms of put out all performances, it's Human Nature, Family of Blood. In terms of the Doctor, it's one of the episodes from Series, or 2 of the episodes from Series 4 or the specials, plus the 60th, but as 14. We'll get there. But yeah, I thought he was brilliant as John Smith. I won't talk much about the character because he's not a Doctor, but I think Tennant does him really well. And I think, like with Joe Martin, he's able to distinguish the two characters greatly to great effect between the personalities. Also the costume. Yeah, it's a suit, but it looks so cool on him. He looks so good, especially in the coat. Now, I put both sides of that regeneration under the same mantle. If I was to pick which one I would, what I would prefer, I think I probably would put the second version, the second life, below the first life. Because that is leading into what I was talking about with the specials. So I probably would put 10.5 below 10.0. Number 5. On to my favourite incarnation, played by David Tennant, the 14th Doctor, also played by David Tennant. So yeah, the 14th Doctor for me, I think he's the 10th Doctor, but more mature for the most part. He's had lots more experience since then, as the 11th, 12th, and 13th Doctors, and everything that's happened with them, the revelations, the good and the bad, everything that's happened in between. We see this in the Giggle when it's brought up, and While Blue Yonder. But yeah, 14's also allowed to open up a bit more with his emotions, although in private than 13 is. And whilst that technically is supposed to be what 15's supposed to be doing, I think 10 does it more. If not in front of people, then he's definitely lets it out behind people's backs. And he's like in that scene in Wild Blue Yonder. That is a great moment. I think that was my favourite 14th Doctor moment from my ranking. It's definitely up there. He's really great. Yes, he does put the Noble family in danger during the Star Beast, even though he knows Donna shouldn't remember him. He's a little bit reckless there. But for the most parts, I think the character is slightly... I think I prefer 14 as a character more than 10, as much as I love 10 and grew up with him. But I think 14 slightly better, in my opinion. I think the maturity and the experience from the three in between the three Doctors in between helped shape him more, and a slightly more rounded character than 10 was back in his time. Not to dig at him, by the way. It's not to say he's entirely perfect. Like I said, he puts the Noble family at risk quite a bit in Star Beast, even though he's risking Donna getting her memories back, which is resolved in a slightly questionable way. I know a lot of people weren't really happy with Donna getting her memories back full stop, but I think the final resolution is a little... I think it could have been a bit better. I can see what Russell's message was, but it just comes off a bit awkward. Maybe because I'm a man. You know what that scene is. You know what I'm talking about. Maybe because I'm a guy. Maybe I don't get it. Because I'm male presenting. I'm a male presenting Time Lord. I'm not a Time Lord, but you know what I mean. But yeah, I think even ladies kind of don't really think that was a very good line. Those are very good lines. Ladies, correct me if I'm wrong. Or at least you personally. But I think it's also really great that we have the dynamic of David Tennant and Catherine Tate again, just like in Series 4. It's like they were never away, but at the same time you got all of that time of experience adding on and what happened with Donna's life, and I think that's added to the characters really well. I think with the giggle, it kind of maybe is a little bit taken away with the bi-generation, and him settling down on Earth, meaning that the Nobles get their own Doctor, just like the TARDIS did with the duplicate Doctor. Martha Jones is sitting in the corner being like, where's my Doctor? The other one regenerated into himself. Why can't I have the bi-generated split from them, who then goes off to travel in the memory TARDIS? Yeah, that's possibly canon, according to Rusty Davies. That's possibly canon. In that case, why isn't 14 gone to the memory TARDIS? He's hanging out with the Nobles. And how come we didn't see the other Doctors split from the regeneration? Do they just turn up in the memory TARDIS? Overall, I think 14 is a little bit better than 10, personally speaking, but they're almost equal. I just think 14 being a little bit more experienced and a bit more mature, mostly, works really well. And Wild Blue Yonder is an absolute perfect demonstration of this. This is as well, but also showing his flaws as well. He's still got some flaws. Some of the same flaws from Ted, but also his own. It's a nice run of 3 episodes. I know they're not as well liked now as they were back in the day, apart from maybe Wild Blue Yonder. I think they got a bit more well received at the time of broadcast, but I think now they've gone down in opinion, except Wild Blue Yonder, possibly. But still, despite that, 14 is really good. And also, I think he should have more expanded media stories. Check out my video on Universals from last month about that for more details. Number 4. So we're now on to the top 4, and we start off with the actor who had the hardest job of all of them, arguably. The second Doctor, played by Patrick Troughton. Patrick Troughton definitely had the hardest job. He had to succeed William Hartnell, who, as I mentioned earlier, he became the face of the programme, because even though the Daleks made the show popular, but the series carried on and was still popular because of Hartnell and the other characters in the series, the companions, the various creatures they've meet, or historical people, or whatever they've got up to each week. But because Hartnell was really popular as the first Doctor, whoever succeeded him had a lot of shoes to fill. Very big shoes. Patrick Troughton was, as they say, in an adventure in space and time, the only man in England who, or Britain as a whole even, who could take over the job. And yeah, he was the perfect casting for this role again. He is absolutely amazing. Funny enough, Peter Cushing, the Dalek movie Doctor, was offered the role of the second Doctor, and he declined it because he didn't want to do TV, but then later regretted it. But at least he's still Doctor Who from the movies. Again, shame they didn't do a third one. He could have used that as an excuse. But Troughton, the character they drew up for him was so different to William Hartnell's Doctor, you could barely believe it was even the same guy as the lead character. And yet, like other shows, they introduce a new main character to take over the role, such as in Robin of Sherwood. Or like James Bond, you might just get a new actor playing the same character, and they might have a different take on the role, like we would see with George Lazenby a few years later on Her Majesty's Secret Service, coming out at the end of Patrick Troughton's tenure, actually. So you could see how the actors differed between the portrayals, but it was still supposed to be the same person as people outside being loud for some reason. But I think the regeneration idea, or renewal idea as it was called till John Pertwee's final story, was a genius move. I believe by script editor Jerry Davis, who also co-wrote The 10th Planet with Kit Pedler. And it was a genius move on their part, and to explain how the character can change but also be the same person at the same time. So it's both the same character but also a completely different character as well, simultaneously. And that's what we've got ever since. And I think that's why the characters lasted so long. That's why the shows lasted so long and so popular, because we have all of these guys and gals as these different incarnations who are different to each other, but also similar in places as well. Patrick Troughton definitely takes the more fun, light-hearted side of the character, but he also has that sort of somewhat manipulative and sly side that later Doctors would develop, especially Sylvester McCoy. But he is definitely originates some of those, or at least takes what Hartnell did and magnifies them. Not to say he doesn't have any serious moments. He's got a couple of serious moments. One of my favourite scenes, my favourite scene of his entire era, as I mentioned in the Top 10 Stories video, is the scene in Part 3 of The Tomb of the Cybermen when he's talking to Victoria about their families. That scene is one of the most beautiful scenes of the whole show, and Troughton delivers it perfectly. It's hard to describe. And then Season 6, the rapport with him, Fraser Hines' Jamie, and Wendy Padbury's Zoe is just second to none. Well, the rapport with Jamie across the whole tenure, besides Power of the Daleks, of course, is on top form. But Season 6 is especially is especially on point. Especially the final story, the War Games, where he is faced with a problem he can't solve without calling the Time Lords, who at this point in time he was on the run from, and if they caught up with him, he's in trouble. Very, very big trouble. So I love how he plays up this, and the writers play up the danger and the consequences for him for calling for help. Troughton's also one of the most facially expressive Doctors, and it is a shame so much of his time is missing. I mean, so many of his episodes are missing, and animation and reconstructions have done a great job, for the most part, in bringing these episodes back to life, but nothing beats the original expressions. He is such an expressive Doctor, so it's like recreating William Hartnell's his hms and or flubs or something. It's hard to do without the original actor on screen doing it. If it's just audio, or if it's animation, or even just an impressionist, it's tricky to get it right. So I applaud the teams for as best as they can to recapture this very expressive performance. Yeah, Charlton was a very expressive Doctor. I don't really have any negative notes to say apart from the whole blackface in thing. He wanted to play it blackface, and I am thankful that cooler heads prevailed and said, "No, please, for the love of God, don't do that." Okay, they probably didn't say that, but but I'm glad that they said, "No, don't do that," because we now would be like, well, I wouldn't be putting Patrick Troughton. I wouldn't be putting him this high up if he did. I don't know if I put him at the bottom, but I don't think I'd be putting him very high up at all. But thankfully, they didn't go with that, and now we've got one of the best incarnations ever. So we avoided something that could have been a lot worse. No, we got a really great Doctor instead, thank goodness. Cooler heads prevailed, and Patty Tratty went on to be an amazing Doctor. Why am I calling Patty Tratty? Blame Will Maddox. Blame Will Maddox. Just be glad I didn't call him Daddy Patty Tratty. Damn it.
Y'all already know what I think. The second Doctor is beheast!
Oh, and as for his returns in future stories, I didn't mention this with Jon Pertwee or David Tennant. But yeah, Troughton slips into the role like he never was away in all of his returning stories. Although the timeline discrepancies are quite strange. And I can buy that for 1973 with 72, 73 for 3 Doctors, and even 1983 with 5 Doctors. But by the 2 Doctors in 1985, it is a bit strange that we've got a sort of older second Doctor working for the Time Lords, but Jamie's with him, and he's got some tech that the 6th Doctor doesn't even have. Are we supposed to believe that Season 6B's theory is true? Well, apparently so. Personally, I'm not really a fan of the Season 6B theory. I mean, I don't really hate it, but I don't know. I think the character development was really great up to the War Games, and like Will Maddox says, anything after that with the second Doctor going on some more missions, apart from those little comic strips in late 1969, anything else would be a bit of a wouldn't be really a great idea. Plus, the 2 Doctors, he's kind of treated like what any of the other Doctors after him could easily have done. Like, the next story, Time Lash, even has a 3rd Doctor painting cameo, so could easily have been him. And funny enough, I think they wanted the 1st Doctor originally before Richard Hurndell passed away, before he could reprise the role. So that makes even less sense. I should also give a shout out to the voice impressionists Fraser Hines and later Michael Troughton for bringing the 2nd Doctor to life on audio, and shout out to Tim Treloar for the 3rd Doctor's voice as the voice of the 3rd Doctor on Big Finish. Number 3. Now, if David Tennant, either of his Doctors, more so the 10th Doctor, was not being in the top 5, well, that's 14 Doctors in the top 5, so technically Tennant is in the top 5. But if you are a bit sad that he's not in the top 3, but you're also a fan of the other most iconic Doctor and the most popular Doctor, I'm sure you'll be a lot more happy to see this one here. As number 3 is, in my opinion, the best classic Doctor, the 4th Doctor, played by Tom Baker. Yeah, he's iconic for a reason. Not only because he did 7 seasons worth of several, like 100 or so episodes, more than 100. It was 20 to 26 episodes a season, 28 for the last one, plus 6 episodes that didn't get finished, so that's another 6 if you want to add that on. So that's 7 seasons of 20 to 28 episodes, including the 6 that didn't get finished then. Technically, they've kind of been finished by animation, which Tom Baker did return for a final bonus scene for the 2017 version of Shada, and included on the 21 version as well, I believe. So, yeah. 7 seasons, 3 showrunners, as we would call them now in the new series, produced, well, 4 technically, because Barry Letts did Robot before handing over to Philip Hinchcliffe. 4 producers, although 3 for the main seasons. 7 seasons, several, over 100, maybe even 200 episodes. Several serials. It's staggering, and not to mention an iconic costume and variants of the costume. it's so many great coat and scarf and variants and the other stuff underneath, but we mostly care about the scarf and the coat. So many great variants. I think season 13's and the Graham Williams era's versions are the most iconic, and season 18's as well. But that's because it was all red and a bit of purple or blue on that scarf, but mostly maroon and brown and a bit of blue or purple. Whilst the other colours were kind of a bit of a mixture of colours, but they all blended nicely, like some browns or blue, reds or greys. Yeah, Tom Baker is also very versatile in his performances. He can do the serious stuff, but he can also do a lot. He's more of a comedic incarnation. Not that he's always being funny. Seeds of Doom does a really great job with his serious portrayal, and Invasion of Time has him as more of a trickster. Like, you don't really know what he's doing sort of incarnation. Is he being the bad guy before Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor became the bad guy in Hellbent? Or Colin Baker pretending to be the bad guy in Mind Warp? So yeah, you don't really know what's going on with him. I do have to say, some of the times where he is supposed to be being a bit more serious, when he does make more comedic remarks, it does come off a bit like a little forced for me. Like in Genesis of the Daleks, whenever in parts 1 and 2, where he's like when he's being shouted at by Raven, and he makes a funny quip or like remark or something. I find that like, no, this is not the time. This is a kind of more serious situation. Especially like this is a very dark and serious story, and I feel like sometimes the more humorous banter can kind of rub off the wrong way when we're like in a more serious story. But if we're in a story like City of Death or most of season 17, then it's totally in character. I mean, I'm not saying it's out of character, but I'm saying that the situation is a bit more relevant for it. So maybe this is kind of what's stopping me from putting him higher. That and the fact that I got another one I prefer more and another one who I think is even better, objectively. So he has to end up in third by that metric. I almost did put Patrick Troughton above him for this reason as well. But I think Tom Baker's versatility and the characters' adaptations, but also playing to the strengths, works really well. I do have to say, I'm glad they didn't go with the talking cabbage idea. That would have been terrible. Sorry, Tom. Love you, but that would have been terrible. Yeah, he got 7 seasons, and he's not always the same throughout. I do like him being a bit more serious in the Hinchcliffe era for the most part. He's still like more fun, comedic in places than John Pertwee and William Hartnell, maybe even Patrick Troughton in places, but he's able to keep the more serious side. And then going into Graham Williams' era, when they were intentionally making the show more fun, because Hinchcliffe era was leaning more into horror and darker storytelling, but when they got into trouble for that, thank you, Mary Whitehouse, they had to. When Graham Williams came in to take over, he pivoted to comedy, sci-fi comedy adventures, like what Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy would do. Funny enough, Douglas Adams would be script editor from the end of Armageddon Factor through to Shardus, so makes a lot of sense that you get one of the most iconic and sci-fi comedy writers in to script edit the most iconic and most popular British sci-fi TV series of all time. And certainly one of the most longest lasting ones. Though I do have to say, sadly, that season is season 17. Arguably the worst season of Doctor Who ever, in my opinion. I know some people would say other seasons, like season 24, or one of the New Who ones, if you're one of those people. But yeah, for me, it's season 17, apart from City of Death and Shada, of course. Which, funny enough, are Douglas Adams scripts, or co-scripts, funny enough. So it's the other scripts. But Douglas Adams script edited them. And I think Destiny of the Daleks was worse off because of that. Either way. Moral of the story is, let Douglas Adams do Douglas Adams, and let the other writers do their stuff. And then season 18, John Nathan Turner wanted the series to be a bit more science fact, or losing a lot of scientific concepts into the series, and for you can see that Tom Baker's not really enjoying this one as much. He didn't get on with JNT, and he also wasn't very well at the time. He had Spanish flu or something. And although he would end up marrying Lana Ward, which is why they both left the show at this point in time, the relationship soon broke down afterwards. So maybe things weren't going so well with them behind the scenes before they committed to do the marriage. So season 18 was probably a turbulent production. It's probably is why he stepped down after doing his 7th season. I don't know how well season 19 would have gone if it was Tom Baker. I think quite a lot of that, both the pros and cons of that season, are because it was brand new Doctor Peter Davison and working towards his strengths, and also affected by the weaknesses. So I don't know how better or worse season 19 could have been if Tom Baker did an 8th year, but I think if he was in a better mindset than season 18, it probably would have been better than season 18. But at the same time, if he wasn't having a good time there, then it was, yeah, as Tegan says, it stopped being fun and then gotta go. But he did an incredible run of 7 seasons, as I mentioned, so he deserves a massive round of applause for that. That's just the beginning. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if he would have wanted to do another one after season 18, after doing 7, if that's how he's in the mindset of at the time. But he manages to pull through in the end, and we managed to end the 4th Doctor here on a fairly emotional moment in Logopolis. And you know what? He does a really good job at playing melancholy. If his head was in a bit of a bad headspace at the time, then he at least manages to take advantage of that with a more melancholy performance in his final story. So he did a great job there. It's a shame he didn't really come back as the 4th Doctor properly after this. We got scenes from Shada for 5 Doctors because he thought it would be too soon to come back after leaving 5 Doctors, that makes sense. Dimensions in Time, he only has a brief appearance, which is a shame. I would have liked him to have been more in the Albert Square stuff. Actually, maybe it was a good thing. Maybe he managed to avoid that bit by staying in the booth to talk to the other Doctors from there. Let the other 80s Doctors and John Pertwee wander around Albert Square. If they did do the Dark Dimension, that would have been a big story that focused on the 4th Doctor and his regeneration being averted, at least temporarily, and that Doctors 5, 6, and 7 would not exist, and so the 4th and 3rd Doctors would have to fix that and get their other future selves back. It's an interesting concept, and it probably would have been a better 30th anniversary special than Dimensions in Time. I don't know how good it would have been, though, in fairness. And like I said, Tom Baker was wonderful as the curator. But that's not the 4th Doctor. But like I said, he has one more scene in Shada, coming back to play the character one last time on screen for the 2017 and 2021 versions of the story. Also, audio. He's done quite a bit. It took him a while to be convinced to do Big Finish, but he eventually came around to that, and he's been flying ever since. I'll just end by saying there's a reason why he's the most iconic, or one of the most iconic, and one of the most popular Doctors, joint most popular with David Tennant maybe at this point, if not possibly the most popular. Number 2. So now we're down to the last 2, both from the new series. Oh, typical. A person who joined with the new series, of course he puts some new series Doctors as his top 2 Doctors. Yeah, well, but it's not the one that got me into the show, so you can rest easy. However, I did see some episodes before the Edits London, or at least bits of some episodes, one of which was a David Tennant. The other 2 were with my number 2 choice, and that is the 9th Doctor, played by Christopher Eccleston. So, even though, apart from maybe seeing his first 2 episodes, or bits of his first 2 episodes that I remember very well, I mentioned it in the live stream last week, go check that out, which were Rose and End of the World, and also Christmas Invasion for 10th Doctor. But with the 9th Doctor, even though I would watch him properly on repeats on BBC 3 after watching the end of Series 2, I would still... I experienced the 9th Doctor fairly early on, and over time, I think my love and appreciation for him has grown. I think Nine's popularity when David Tennant came along maybe dipped a little bit because David Tennant was so popular at the time, and he was the one carrying the show. And even when Matt Smith came along, um, because Eccleston only did the one series, maybe it was being a bit maybe lost in the mix a little bit. I think it was around the time of the 50th anniversary, though, that I was seeing more love for Eccleston than I had before. And so going through from there, maybe even before that, actually. So going from there, I was seeing how much Eccleston was loved by fans, more so than David Tennant or even Matt Smith, and even some of the classic Doctors. And over time and rewatching his episodes, yes. I mean, I always liked Eccleston. I always thought he was brilliant. I always loved watching his episodes as much as David Tennant, Matt Smith, and later Peter Capaldi, and the classic Doctors when I started getting into them as well. But it definitely took a bit. It definitely was as I was getting into my teens, going older, that Eccleston, aside from one more Doctor left that I got to mention, Eccleston was starting to slowly creep up the list, and to the point where he has reached second long ago at this point. Like my top three at the very least have been fairly solid for a while, and then the next couple down have been almost fairly solid, with the addition of the 14th Doctor in recent years, of course. But I think the Ninth Doctor is such an incredible incarnation. It was an inspired and bold move to make him a post-war veteran, and to be very different to what all of his incarnations before were like, for the most part. I mean, he still had, he was still a little bit grumpy and a little bit tougher, more alien Doctor, but he also had his fun side as well. But it was the genius direction of the character and the absolutely stellar casting of Christopher Eccleston that made the Ninth Doctor so perfect. He was not only a new Doctor for a new generation, but he was a breath of fresh air. And yeah, it's no wonder everybody got attached to him for the one series he had, and or people coming back later and proclaiming him as one of the best incarnations many years later, and after a few more popular Doctors or longer lasting Doctors, he's become one of the most popular in the fan circles. And yeah, the character journey is one of the best as well, as they only had the one series and they didn't know if they were going to have another one afterwards or if he would stay on for a second series, as he ultimately didn't. They had a single series to get everything right, which, okay, not everything was right, but they had, and especially if we go to a production angle, what the hell is going on behind the scenes, guys? Come on, get some safety measures in already. They seem to be having that problem with the recent era as well. How come safeguarding is a problem with the RTD eras, especially this series, which ended up being one of the best series, but a bit of a cost. But Eccleston was himself; he was incredible. Even when he was dealing with depression and some other condition that was making him skinny, as we see in Dalek. Even he was fighting for that, and then his father passing away during the filming of Father's Day. Despite going through a lot at the time, as well as everything happening around him on set, he manages to channel this into the character, and he does it absolutely brilliantly. And he says he doesn't think he was very funny in that, but I think he's got some good comedic moments or some good light-hearted charm in there. Every emotion the character plays, every beat that we see in the series is pitch perfect to the moment. It is so good. Series 1 is a triumph, mainly in part thanks to Eccleston. Here's the Ninth Doctor, plus the writing for his character, the scripts, as well as also Billie Piper's Rose Tyler being the right companion at the right time as well. But yeah, it's such a tour de force for this series. the finale is especially worth mentioning for that. Again, mentioned that in the birthday video the other week. But I also want to shout out The Empty Child, The Doctor Dances, because that's the first time since the Time War, at least in the TV episodes, that the Doctor's won without anybody dying or getting seriously hurt. In fact, actually, everybody who's seriously hurt or supposedly dead comes back to life, all restored because of the nanogenes. It is a victory at the best level, and whilst there will be a few more victories going forward, such as Science in the Library Forest of the Dead. Oh, hello again, Stephen Moffat, for both of these two stories. But this scene is this is an absolutely amazing moment, and also Father's Day when he, even though he's not in the episode, but we get some really great moments with him, like with the whole time changing thing, and then later, with Pete Tyler having sacrificing himself, and also having and protecting everyone in the church. Oh, and that great scene where he's talking to the couple who are supposed to be getting married, but everything, and they're talking about having a normal life, and he says, "Oh, I've never had something like that." That again, going back to the scene in Tomb of the Cybermen Part 3, that is such a great moment. Yeah, it's very hard to describe, but I think my favourite performance from Eccleston is Dalek. Again, despite what he was going through at the time, he channels that amazingly into the episode, into the performance as the Doctor. As soon as he finds out a Dalek is still alive, he is bitter and angry because he believes the Dalek's responsible for destroying Gallifrey. He blames them for the war. Obviously, we haven't had Day of the Doctor yet, and he wouldn't have remembered that anyway. But yeah, he's able to challenge the entirety of his hate into that, of like his negative emotions into that story, and yeah. But we can also see that he's both justified but also flawed at the same time. And when he goes sinks to the same levels as the Dalek, or is about to sink to the same levels as the Dalek, then yeah, he needs to be shown that he's going too far with it, but he isn't beyond redeemability, as opposed to, say, Hell-Bent, where he does go a bit too far, and doesn't care. Here, he's being shown, no, you are going too far, and that's like he realizes, yeah, he's becoming as bad as the Dalek, and I think that whole scene from where the Dalek is trying to get the sunlight on it, that whole bit down there, and then on to when they realise the Dalek's been infected by Rhodes' DNA. That is a whole beautiful scene, as it's showing the Doctor going from the ready to kill the Dalek to then realising what he's doing, then somewhat feeling sorry for it, because it knows it's not what it considers right. And in the end, maybe he's a bit sad that it's gone, because it ends up killing itself. I mean, like, it's a really great... maybe he's not that sad, but it's a really great showcase of the performances in just a couple of minutes, in one scene, going from almost as bad as the Dalek to maybe even feeling a bit sorry for it. So yeah, I think these episodes are masterclasses of the performances and the writing of the character and the directing. It's so amazing, and I think that's why the Ninth Doctor resonates so much with so many people. Not just because it's amazing performances and amazing writing, but it's also very real as well, very raw. This was nothing like we'd seen before, even with the darker or harder Doctors like the Sixth Doctor, or and nor would we have anything like this again, or even the 12th Doctor when he would do it. We've not really done this, and despite the amazing actors, again, Chris Eccleston's another contender for, actually no, scratch that, he's second best. I'm putting him down as second best. David Tennant, Tom Baker, you guys can battle out for third. Yeah, and so can everybody else. He's just so good. I can't really describe it. I'll end on a more happy note, because Dalek is quite a heavy. That was quite heavy with Dalek. To end on a more happy note, I mentioned that I did think he could do comedy. well, even though he didn't think he could. I would say Boomtown. He's pretty good in Boomtown. He's really good there, which is that's probably the most light-hearted script of this series, arguably. And he's so good there as well. There's the really great bits where when Captain Jack's doing the planning. He's like, "Excuse me, who's in charge here?" And he just goes with Jack's plan. Like he said, nice plan. And then immediately after is that scene with the secretary outside Margaret Slivine's office, and there's the whole bit with she's climbing out the window, isn't she? Yes. Margaret. Oh, that's so good. Oh, and outside with the Sonic. Yeah, see, Eccleston, you can do comedy really well. You are so talented. You are so amazing. You cannot do anything wrong, at least as far as Series 1 is concerned. And yeah, apparently he's also really great in Big Finish as well. So yeah, I think he sounded a little bit different in the first run of stories, but at least from the trailers and the clips. But like second box set onwards, yeah, he's definitely sounding like he's back. He is totally back. And I'm hoping he is enjoying his Big Finish experience, especially now that he's done audios with Billie Piper as Rose. So who he did get on really well with. So I'm really hope he's having a much better time doing Big Finish, as well as meeting the fans. Also, really sweet of him to do that like mini clip of him helping a couple get engaged at one point. I believe Billy Tracy showcased at one point. So yeah, really nice of him there. Big up Christopher Eccleston. He may not be the best ambassador for the show, except when promoting it at the time. But he is definitely a very lovely person and very much someone we all love. And he's back interacting with the fans and doing Big Finish. Fantastic. Oh yeah, and that's another fantastic moment I need to throw in there as well. That scene in Rose. Oh, that is so good. Well, I honestly could have ended it there if it wasn't for the fact I've got one more Doctor. Number 1. Okay, a little bit of biasy for the last one. My favourite Doctor is, drumroll please, no, we're not going to do that. Let's get on with it. It is, of course, the 11th Doctor, played by Matt Smith. But why? He's not one of the most iconic Doctors. Well, he's a bit more iconic than some others, but he's not Tom Baker or David Tennant. He's not as fantastic as Christopher Eccleston or maybe even Patrick Troughton, objectively, or John Pertwee. But for me, because I was growing up with David Tennant, but Matt Smith comes along and kind of blows it out of the water as well, because he's I wasn't really sure what he was going to be like. It was the first proper transition, even though I had seen Eccleston's transition into David Tennant, but that was on repeat, and same with some of the other regeneration stories were on repeat broadcasts, and I would later see some more on DVD and Blu-ray. I think I saw most of them before Matt Smith regenerated, and I definitely saw all of them before Peter Capaldi regenerated. But this was the first one which I was seeing live. Well, I suppose Long Live Journey's End, but this was the first one from old actor to new actor that I saw for the first time, and I was like, okay, what's he gonna be like? What's he gonna do? I wasn't entirely sure in the post-regeneration scene and End of Time Part 2, but the BBC Breakfast clip, I think I talked about this in the top 10 stories video as well. That clip on BBC Breakfast of a scene when he's going back to the TARDIS in Amelia's garden, with young Amelia tailing him. It's after they have the whole thing with the crack and the Atraxii scene. We got a bit more of a taste for him there, and there was a bit more confidence. And then the episode aired, blew us away. It was incredible. I have mentioned this several times before. Any fears that the series couldn't continue with Russell T Davies or David Tennant in 2010 was scuppered by the 11th hour. Matt Smith, Stephen Moffat, Series 5 would most of Series 5 at least, would prove that Doctor Who can continue after David Tennant, after Russell T Davies, the first time. And yeah, it was a tour de force. And Matt Smith just got better and better. Okay, he wasn't... Okay, I don't think Series 7 Part 2 11th Doctor is very good. I don't really know what the heck they were going on there with him making it a bit more sexually active, I guess, and saying and thinking some things and doing some things in some of those episodes. It's just like, what the hell are you doing, Stephen and other writers? Like, where are we going with this? But rewatching Series 5 for the reviews back in 2020, I was able to notice that Matt Smith did a really good job in portraying the darker side of the character as early as Victory of the Daleks and the Angel two-parter. But it's really halfway through Series 6 that when we really see the old man in the young man's body. And I think that's what it is that makes him my favourite Doctor. He's not just a young man. He's not just more eye candy like the 10th Doctor, who isn't just eye candy as well. There's more to him. He's not just a 10th Doctor clone. He is definitely his own person, but at the same time, you can definitely see the years that have come before. He's definitely done some mileage. This is, again, what we're talking about with the 14th Doctor, but this time expanding it to the whole, like, all of the incarnations before. I think by the time we get to Series 6 and the threat of, like, everybody's scared of him, that angle that they wanted to tell with the rogue clerics led by Adam Klavarian in that series, and the Silence, the rogue ones, separate to the ones we see in the Angel two-parter or Time of the Doctor. It really shows what a tour de force Matt Smith is in these scenes as well, and these episodes, and how great he is there. But he's also really good in the comedy scenes as well. He's really great. I think he does a really good balance and blend of the lighter stuff and the darker stuff in Series 5 and 6 and 7 Part 1. It's Series 7 Part 2 where things start to fall apart a little bit, but we kind of get back on track by the end with Name of the Doctor through to the anniversary specials, except for the whole ball stuff and Church of Naked People and Time of the Doctor. Like, what the hell was going on with that? I know Matt Smith shaved his hair for another production, but they didn't need to address that in the episode. Paul McGann wore a wig for the TV movie. William Hartnell wore a wig in every story he played the first Doctor, and possibly Patrick Troughton as well. So if Matt Smith was going to wear a wig, and Karen Gillan in that same episode, I think, as well, you don't have to address it, because it never got addressed before. Don't need to address it now. Unless it was part of the plot. But no, it was just a joke. So, I don't know. But yeah. I think things did kind of start falling apart during Series 7 Part 2, but there was still some redeeming elements in there as well. It wasn't like a total failure. It was just a few questionable moments here and there that kind of affected that last few couple of episodes before the 50th. And Time of the Doctor to a lesser extent. But, again, I blame the writers for that, rather than the actor. Nevertheless, I still really get more attached to the 11th Doctor more than most of the other Doctors. More so, again, Series 5 and 6, and 7 Part 1. I think that is where I probably got my closest attachment to him. But Series 7 Part 2 was a little bit of a murkier ground, and kind of a bit 50-50 with the specials. With how they treated him. But aside from a few questionable things in Time of the Doctor, I actually think that story is a very great tribute story to the 11th Doctor and to Matt Smith as an actor. I still think it should have been a bit longer, or a two-parter like End of Time, to flesh out the Trenzalore stuff and to give the Doctor a better send-off, or at the very least cut some of the more questionable and pointless stuff. So you got more time for that in the 60 minutes you do have. But in the end, it's still really great. He's so good, and it's entirely personal reasons, entirely subjective why he's top of the list, as opposed to, say, Eccleston or Tom Baker, who objectively one or the other of those probably would have topped it. Probably Eccleston. But entirely subjective. It's Matt Smith for me. I want to shout out an issue of Doctor Magazine. I can't remember which one, but it was before Matt Smith regenerated. It did say how each of the previous 10 incarnations got somewhat represented by 11. And I thought, 11 does sort of channel a lot of all 10 of his previous incarnations. War Doctor as well, probably. I think it was, it was before Name of the Doctor aired, so there's probably some War Doctor in there too. So, yeah, I guess it's all a blend of all of the past incarnations, the old man in the young man's body, and personal relationships to the character as a viewer is probably why the 11th, despite the flaws, especially in Series 7 Part 2, in spite some of that, the 11th Doctor remains, even to this day, my favourite. Well, that's it from the list. Before I go, I shall quickly do a recap of the list. So number 17 is the 6th Doctor, played by Colin Baker. Number 16, I keep getting the numbers mixed up. Number 16 is the 5th Doctor, played by Peter Davison. Number 15 is the War Doctor, played by John Hurt. Number 14 is the 13th Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker. Number 13 is the Fugitive Doctor, played by Joe Martin. Number 12 is the 8th Doctor, played by Paul McGann. Number 11 is the 1st Doctor, played by William Hartnell. Number 10 is the 12th Doctor, played by Peter Capaldi. I suppose I do have a little bit of bias because I did grow up with him for a bit as well. Even though it's the series when I became an adult, is the series that is his best one. Anyway, number 9 is the 7th Doctor, played by Sylvester McCoy. Number 8 is the 15th Doctor, played by Ncuti Gatwa. I so wanted to put him higher. Number 7 is the 3rd Doctor, played by John Pertwee. Number 6 is the 10th Doctor, played by David Tennant. Both in regenerations. Although, like I said, I would put 10, the first, the pre-Stolen Earth regeneration life before, as the higher rated one, and the Journey's End to End of Time life as the second, as the lower rated version, if we were doing lives. Number 5 is the 14th Doctor, also played by David Tennant. Number 4 is the 2nd Doctor, played by Patrick Troughton. Number 3 is the 4th Doctor, played by Tom Baker, the best classic Doctor. And I suppose if we counted the Bad Wolf era separately, that's 14, in my opinion, at the moment. Even though I did want Ncuti to be higher. Then number 2 is the 9th Doctor, played by Christopher Eccleston. And my favourite Doctor, number 1, the 11th Doctor, played by Matt Smith, who's also the best new series Doctor, I've got to mention. Yeah, that's my list, plus a couple of honourable mentions at the start, and a few others I mentioned along the way that I remembered to add in. As for Billie Piper as the question mark Doctor / question mark, because we don't know if it is the Doctor or not, we shall have to see. Initial gut punch out of the way, and take away the fact that it's probably not a good idea. How was Billie Piper in that one scene? Yeah, she was good, I suppose. Like, for what she had to do there, yeah, she was alright. Superimposed her onto Ncuti's bodies, but otherwise, yeah, alright. We'll just have to see what happens next, I guess, before we make a solidification of them or whoever's next, or both. We'll have to come back. It probably won't be next year. It might be the year. It might be 2028 or later, where we'll come back with an update on what's going on. Maybe for my 30th birthday or something, like I said, with the top 10 stories, maybe there's an update or something with that. Actually, I think it'd be more likely this video that might get an update in a couple of years' time to include whoever comes next, I guess, or Billie Piper and whoever comes next, or just Billie, depending on the situation. As I said, at time of recording, we know there's going to be an announcement soon. I'm hoping to get these out before the announcement, but so that we can, they don't age too badly. Even if they age, that's fine. But I don't want them to age after the announcement happens. So we'll see. On the other hand, I am very curious to know what happens. So I guess I shouldn't mind that much. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Nick here. This is a final part of this video I wanted to include. Before the video was finished in the editing, at time of recording, I've still got to finish number 3 and then do 2 and 1 in the end. It's 5:33 on Wednesday the 10th of June, so just under a week from when the main bulk, most of the video was recorded, apart from the extra honourable mentions and the Will Maddox cameo on the Tuesday, the 9th. So at time of now recording this bit and the videos going out once they're all done, is that the press statement has been released. My reaction videos being uploaded as we speak. That I recorded about just before 3 o'clock earlier that I was out, but I recorded it whilst it being out. So, yeah, the 2026 special is not happening now. Whether Billy Piper will be the 16th Doctor or an in-between Doctor, whatever the next era does, not sure. I talk about it more in that reaction video, so do check that out. But that does mean no 2026 Christmas special and no episode for the foreseeable future after Christmas 2026. No guarantee for a 2027 or even 2028. I said that was probably the earliest we're going to get if it isn't going to be too late 2020, late 27 or 2028 would be the earliest, but I think it could easily be later. Hopefully not. Hopefully 2028 at the latest. But yeah, so everything to do with the 2026 Christmas special that I've mentioned up to this point, as of now, 10th of June 2026, forget about it, it's not happening. And the series is on hiatus. Again, we're in the second Wilderness years. Maybe it won't be as bad as the last one. But yeah, basically forget about everything I mentioned about the 2026 Christmas special. Up to this point, it's not happening. And regarding the next Doctor, so I guess doing these videos now and the top 10 stories ranking a few weeks ago for the birthday were good times to do them, because we're not going to get any more episodes for at least another year or two now going forward, on top of the year we've already had, or more than a year since the Reality War aired. So yeah, that's it. So we're up to date, and no foreseeable future for now. Obviously this video will age differently when more stuff comes in the future, as all videos will. But yeah, it will be at least another year, if not more, till we get series. Well, I was going to say series 3, season 3, but it won't be season 3 now. Season 42, because we don't know what the numbering system will be if the series does carry on. Will it be season 3? Will it be the fourth series 1? Will it be series 16? Will they just renumber the previous two back to 14 and 15 and just say we're carrying on from 16? Will they say it's season 1, but they say the last two have been renumbered 14 and 15 anyway? I'm just going to call it season 42 for now, because I don't know what they're going to call it going forward. Season 42, series 16, for when the next one does come around for the time being. So yeah, series 16, season 42 will not be happening for at least another year, maybe 2, possibly more. So yeah, we're up to date in terms of the Doctors, and just forget everything else I've said up to this point prior to the reaction video about the 2026 Christmas special, or anything else for that matter, until more information is announced, when new stuff is confirmed, when everything's settled in and the next era is ready to enter at least pre-production. That's when we'll have more news. But for the foreseeable future, we're on a longer hiatus, as I mentioned in that video. We're already on a longer hiatus than the 1985 to 86 one. We're now on an even longer hiatus than that, but hopefully not as long as either side of the Wilderness years, between either side of the TV movie. And even more so, hopefully not as long as the entirety of the Wilderness years. So hopefully maybe like half the length of the first or the second half. Actually, the second half was 9 years. Half of that would be about 4 or 5. First half was about 6.5, 7. So that would be about 3 years. I mean, if it comes back late 2027 at the earliest, that's only 2.5 years, so that's not too bad. 2028, that's at least 3.5 years, depending on when. But yeah, fingers crossed it won't be too long. But when it does come back with a whole new production team, creative team, and so forth. But yeah, that's an update for these 3 videos following the announcement that happened before the last video was finished in the editing process. And I'm adding this on at the end of that for the update. So there we go. Back to me from nearly a week ago at time of recording, to more than a week ago at time of release, to finish up this video. Well, anyway, thank you for watching these two very, very long rankings. I know it's taken me several points of the day to do this ranking, these two videos. So, yes, hope you enjoyed these. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne YouTube channel.